Is Avatar 2 a worthy sequel? I think it is. They explore the world, they explore the new characters, they explore what's going on with Jake Sully again, they explore all these different worlds, and you get a whole nother aspect of Pandora that I just really loved. Almost more than Pandora itself. Let's get into it. It pretty much does the exact same thing that the first movie does, and does it so much better and so well. And that is just the world building, the cinematography, the visuals. Being transported into the world of Pandora once again was an amazing experience. During the Avatar IMAX re release in September, I went and rewatched Avatar for the first time in IMAX 3D, and it was an amazing experience. I got to experience what it was like in 2009 watching it for the first time, because obviously I was like 6 years old. I didn't know what was going on. So being able to watch that and experience that for the first time, all this visuals, the epicness of what this story was really interesting. And the original Avatar isn't that crazy of a story either. You know, it's a very simple story. And this movie basically does a similar thing, except we're exploring now the ocean side, and that gives a lot of room for themes and stuff about family, because Jake Sully has a family now. You know, him and the woman, they did stuff, and now they got like 50 kids. There's that hilarious family photo that you see in the beginning of the movie, which I was laughing at. But this movie is once again just another just visual spectacular experience. James Cameron said that like what he wants for the Avatar movies is that you remember the theater experience. You remember sitting there and it being sucked into a world, and that's exactly what we got. There's a lot of like little random things and details in the story that like you might be like, who's that? Like they introduce a new character named Spider, who's like basically human, but he like feels like he's one of the Na'vi. Leia, hey, what are you doing, dog? You're a weird guy. You get introduced to his character, but it kind of seems like you're not really sure what side he's on. It's pretty certain what goes on with his character towards the end, and the stuff that his character does and what his character becomes is very interesting. And that's the same thing with the whole story. At bare bones, it's a family story. It's a very simple like world and story that goes on in the Avatar world. You know, it's just something about family and, you know, protect the natives or whatever. But it's still very universally like seen. It's very universally understood, because it's a world that's kind of based on Earth, but it's on a whole different world and planet. So being able to suck in there and get attached to the stories that's very similar to real life is something that all people can relate to. And I think that's one reason why the success of Avatar was so great in the beginning. The visual intricacies of this whole thing, the technicalities, like everything, that all the underwater sequences were so perfectly directed and handled. I was in awe of like every single shot, and watching it in IMAX 3D high frame rate was a spectacular experience. The thing that did bug me though was how it did switch from 48 to 24 randomly. So just like one shot was 48 frames a second, and then one shot was 24 frames a second. It was very obvious that they switched frame rates, and I don't know why they didn't just commit to like that whole scene being 48 and then other scenes being 24. Because I actually really enjoyed the 48 frames a second. I'm a fan of 24 when they do it in movies, but I actually really enjoy the buttery smoothness of watching in theater and high frame rate and seeing the 3D. It looked really, really good. The characters are pretty interesting. I like where each person is, or who each person is, and the way that they develop. It's something in detail that like I could really relate to. Like the second born, the second youngest son, was a kid who's pretty cool. He's a pretty chill guy, and he becomes friends with like this whale and stuff. And that whole story, that whole element of the story was very interesting to me, and that's kind of what kicks off kind of the emotional aspect of the whole plot. They introduce a new substance that like, you know, the sky people or the humans are like looking for, and they didn't fully dive into that. It was literally like in just one quick scene, and then that's it. It was at least cool to see like, okay, this is why they're here. Let's just move on with the story. Let's go back to the visuals. It was 3 hours and 12 minutes in the theater, and you do feel emotionally attached to the characters. Around the halfway point, something interesting happens where you get sucked into the story. The first hour for sure, like definitely felt really long, but then the movie starts officially starts about an hour in, and then those next 2 hours are awesome. And the last 30 to 45 minutes were just spectacular. There was a bunch of underwater stuff. I had so much fun in the theater watching that, and I would totally recommend it. Comparing it to the original Avatar, I would say that certain scenes, certain things I loved much more here, especially the visuals. But in the first one, it was technically a simpler story, but there was a lot of generic bad guys and stuff like that, and there are characters like that here, but overall, I think they're about equal levels, and that's what it should be. Both movies should be kind of on par with one another. There shouldn't be one that's better than the other. They should both bring new things to the story that you can appreciate both movies for, and I think that's what these movies are doing really well. I'd probably give Avatar: Way of Water 8.5 out of 10. Leaning towards a 9 even. So I'm excited for the sequels coming out. I really enjoyed this movie. I hope to see more. I hope it makes more money. It just reached $1 billion, so let's see what else happens. But it's going to be pretty exciting to see the next movies going on, and hopefully we get them not in another 13 years, but in like 2 or 3 or something, hopefully.